We're out. Brexit is complete as the UK has now officially left the European single market. 4 years since we voted to leave, the longest of goodbyes is finally over.
This is an amazing moment for this country. We have our freedom in our hands.
We'll have reaction from both sides of the channel, also on the programme tonight. Medics at one hospital say they are working in disaster mode and are overwhelmed with COVID cases. And out with the old. Fireworks for some, but a more muted night for many. We'll bring you Big Ben's bongs at midnight.
This is ITV News with Raghi Omar.
Good evening. The longest of farewells finally ended tonight, 4.5 years after the referendum and many more after the debate began. Britain's exit from the European Union is complete. As Big Ben bonged at 11 p.m, the transition period finished and our new trade deal took effect. Boris Johnson says we are now free to do things our own way. They are plenty, though, still sceptical about what it will mean for them. Here's Dan Rivers on the end of Brexit.
On a day when Britain's history altered course, the most famous clock in the land chimed 11 p.m. here, midnight in Europe, the moment our trading relationship with the continent finally changed.
We have our freedom in our hands, and it is up to us to make the most of it. And I think it will be the overwhelming instinct of the people of this country to come together as one united kingdom, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, working together to express our values around the world.
Trade across these waters will be subject to new rules as the transition period ends, but getting here has been torturous. The result of the referendum 4 years ago cost one Prime Minister his job.
I think the country requires fresh leadership.
Another fell trying to implement it.
Brexit means Brexit.
Now, finally, a third leader got Brexit done, but only just. The end of the transition for hauliers means lots of new rules, including ensuring vehicles are now marked with GB stickers, but it will also mean a lot of new paperwork, pushing up costs.
Well, it's certainly going to cost some more money. The sheer amount of time that we have to wait and the empty mileage and everything, and that's certainly going to push the cost through the roof.
Dover's famous cliffs now tower not just over the Channel, but also a gulf of difference in our trading relationship with Europe. But the acid test will be next week, when we'll find out if the government's preparations for this break really were robust enough. Dan Rivers, ITV News, Dover.
Let's cross now to our political correspondent Paul Brand, who is in Westminster. Paul, a really long goodbye, but it's finally happened.
Yeah, and Raghi, when Big Ben chimed 11 tonight, it effectively sounded the death knell to a debate that has dominated our politics for the past 5 years, divided many of us into leave or remain. It will take a long time, I think, for those labels to come off, but tonight they are peeling away, perhaps, for the first time as we enter into this new relationship now with the European Union. It's taken one referendum, 2 general elections, 3 prime ministers to get to this point, but Boris Johnson will claim this as his great victory here. He argued for Brexit. Now he's got to answer for Brexit, and the coming weeks and months will really be the test of that as the country adapts to these new changes to the way we travel around the EU, changes to the way that we trade with the EU. I think the biggest difference, though, that perhaps many of us will notice next year is that Brexit will no longer be the buzzword. Yes, there are arguments to come, but tonight many of them have essentially been settled.
All right, Paul in Westminster, thanks very much indeed. And we can speak now to our Europe editor, James Mates, who is in Calais tonight. James, so what's changed there in the last hour since we've actually finally left the European Union?
Yeah, well, I mean, these changes happened at midnight European time, so they are all now in place. The biggest changes, of course, will be here at Calais, where under the new trade deal, there won't be tariffs to pay, but the frictionless trade that we've enjoyed, in which a lorry getting on a ferry here was much like one getting on a ferry to the Isle of Wight. Well, that is all going to change. Customs declarations, lots of checks, the government publishing, in fact, new information for hauliers tonight on rules that they are going to have to follow as of tomorrow morning. For individuals, freedom of movement across the Channel is ending, and that, of course, works both ways. We will now need visas to spend more than 90 days, nearly 180 here on the continent. We'll need visas to work here. We'll need permission if we want to live here. The pet passport scheme has gone. Booze cruises, they've gone as well. We do learn tonight, though, that if that UK driving licences will continue to be recognised here, so there won't be a need to apply for an international driving licence. That's one change that won't happen.
All right, James in Calais, thanks very much indeed. Some other news now, and the UK has reported a record number of daily coronavirus cases, 55,892, and another 964 people have tragically died after testing positive. It's all putting intense pressure on the NHS, so much so that the Nightingale hospitals have been put on standby. In an email to staff, one London hospital said it can no longer provide high-standard critical care. Sangeeta Lal has the latest.
The pressure is intensifying as almost half of all major hospital trusts in England care for more COVID patients than at the peak of the first wave. Tonight, ambulances queued outside the Royal London, while staff inside warned they're almost at breaking point. In an email that was leaked today, it reads hospitals across North East London are struggling, some with insufficient oxygen supplies, all with insufficient nursing numbers. It says more beds will have to be opened and nursing ratios will change from 1 nurse to 1 patient to 1 to 3. And then it gives this stark message. We are now in disaster medicine mode. We are no longer providing high standard critical care because we cannot.
People are scared, basically. I think they're working in horrible conditions now, seeing horrible things, looking after patients in really appalling situations, often looking after multiple members of the same family and having repeated conversations about the fact that people are not going to survive.
Well, tonight, Barts Health NHS Trust said in response to that email that the rapid expansion of intensive care beds was necessary and that those changes to intensive care beds and to clinical staffing is in line with national guidance. The British Medical Journal says critical care units are over capacity across London, the east and southeast of England. And as infection rates rise, London's Nightingale Hospital is now being ready to help cope with demand. Tonight, as paramedics finish their last shift of 2020, they're readying themselves for a challenging January as the new variant sweeps across the country. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News.
The pandemic also remains a major issue for schools. The reopening of some has been delayed to give them time to prepare for mass testing. But some teachers are questioning how they'll be able to carry that out. The Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, said today he's confident they will cope. Rachel Younger reports.
Well done for logging in. That's fantastic.
They hoped this was history. But while most primary-age children will be back on the 4th, schools in areas with the highest rates of infection got just 4 days to prepare their pupils for more online learning.
I'll put some work in and hopefully you'll be able to see it later. OK then.
A last-minute change without a fixed timetable.
The difficulty is we don't know how long this will be. We've been told the 18th of January, but, you know, if I'm really honest, I can easily see that going on for much longer.
Are you angry this decision came as late as it did?
I'm very frustrated to be told you won't close, you won't close, you won't close. Oh, you're closing.
School governors have come in to offer support, but it's not easy for parents.
I've got 4 children, but actually only 2 devices that they can use, so that's going to be a challenge.
The return of England's secondary schools has also been pushed back. The Education Secretary absolutely confident they'll be ready to mass test their pupils.
This is why we're providing them with all the equipment they need in terms of a test, in terms of a PPE, in terms of all the other equipment that's required to set up a testing station.
But that's not quite how many heads see it.
The idea that perhaps I'm going to have to do mass testing on a daily basis for 250 teenagers is frankly pretty far-fetched. You know, I haven't got the resources, I haven't got the staff, and most of all, I haven't necessarily got the expertise.
Teachers adjusting to another U-turn, leaving the government with few friends left in England's schools. Rachel Younger, ITV News, Watford.
Some of the biggest names in sport and show business have been recognised for their work with a place in the New Year Honours List. Lewis Hamilton received a knighthood after a season which saw him become the most successful Formula One driver of all time. Footballer Jimmy Greaves was made an MBE. Away from sport, there was a damehood for actress Sheila Hancock. And among the lesser-known people on the list was 106-year-old Anne Baker, who received an MBE for fundraising for the NSPCC. Well, there are now just a couple of minutes to go until we welcome the new year, albeit with slightly more muted celebrations than normal. As we wait for Big Ben to strike midnight, there are plenty of countries which have already said goodbye to 2020, as Ellie Pitt reports.
In New Zealand, you'd struggle to spot the difference between the New Year celebrations tonight and last year. Low levels of COVID meant crowds could see out 2020 in Auckland. In Australia, though, the iconic Sydney fireworks exploded over deserted streets. Residents were kept away by restrictions. Meanwhile, in Wuhan, it's a year to the day since health officials reported the then unknown virus. Tonight, thousands gathered to say goodbye to a year that few will miss. Capital cities across Europe have fallen eerily quiet. The Brandenburg Gate is usually the centre of a huge street party. This year it's lit up for Berliners to enjoy from home. The year is ending like no other in memory, and the world welcomes a brighter, better 2021. Ellie Pitt, ITV News.
We're just seconds away now from the end of 2020, a year which has included seismic changes to global politics with Brexit and the US election, and of course, the greatest changes many of us have experienced in our lifetimes during the pandemic. Who knows what the next 12 months will have in store for us? All that's left to do is wish you all a happy and healthy new year. Well, there it is. 2020 is, I'm happy to say, officially over as Big Ben's bongs ring out across a largely empty London. Well, Paul is on the South Bank. Paul.
Yeah, Raggy, tonight, actually the bang of fireworks, which I hadn't expected. We were just expecting the solitary bongs of Big Ben, but some people have come down to the Thames tonight, mostly in their family bubbles. But of course, normally it would be absolutely rammed down here with people reflecting on the year that's passed. For some, a year perhaps to remember, for others, a year perhaps to forget. This year is different, I think, in that we're all united in the same sort of fortunes and feelings about 2020. Most of us happy to see the back of it and hoping for a better year ahead. That promise of these vaccines being rolled out in the coming weeks and months, perhaps some normality by as soon as spring. People shouting Happy New Year down here, and that is what they are absolutely hoping for. Let's hope that 2021 will not be the same as 2020.
I second that hope, Paul. Thank you very much. We can show you some live pictures from Edinburgh now. Normally, of course, the famous Hogmanay party would be in full swing, but it has gone virtual this year. And tonight, as you can see, the capital is empty. In her New Year message, Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said it has been an unimaginably difficult year and thanked people for the sacrifices they have made. So, as 2020 ends, Let's look back at some of the moments which have made it, for many reasons, a year to remember or perhaps to forget. It began in flames as bushfires spread rapidly across Australia, an eerie portent of things to come. Here, a moment of history in a country with lots of history, as Britain took its first steps outside the EU. Carving their own path too were Harry and Meghan as they split from the royals. And then, in what seems now like a fleeting moment, everything changed. It all seemed so far away when the virus gripped China. But as it spread into our towns and our neighbourhoods, there was no escaping it. And then, the only escape from the virus was never to go anywhere. Stay at home, we were told, to protect lives. But still, lives were lost. Too many to bear. Too many families who couldn't say a proper goodbye. Yet even kept apart, people came together like never before and showed our carers how much we care for them with clapping in the street or a walk around the garden worth £32 million. Some moments, though, were too powerful for the virus to stop. In the midst of it all, one man's death ignited a global movement for change. And America made its own change with a vote for a new president. A new year brings new beginnings. For while we still can't have that hug with a loved one we long for, there is hope that better days do lie ahead. And when they come, who amongst us will ever take them for granted again? Well, it's goodbye 2020 and hello 2021. We just want to wish all of you and your loved ones a very, very happy new year. Goodbye from all of us.